A trove of new emails sent and received by Dr. Anthony Fauci gives us some new insights into what the nation's top infectious disease expert was thinking in the early days of the pandemic. We're going to break down what those emails show and what they don't show in this episode of the Truth of Meter Minute. Hey everyone, I'm Aaron with PolitiFact. We've been making videos now for about a year to try to give you the facts about the coronavirus. So be sure to subscribe to keep following us for the latest. So today we're going to talk about Dr. Anthony Fauci. BuzzFeed and the Washington Post published thousands of emails Fauci sent and received in the first 6 months of 2020. The released emails include some truly interesting correspondences. For instance, actress Morgan Fairchild writes to Fauci on February 26th, asking Fauci if she could use her Twitter account to help spread news about COVID-19. Fauci responds, "It would be great if you could tweet to your many followers. The American public should not be frightened, but should be prepared to mitigate an outbreak in this country by measures including social distancing, teleworking, temporary closure of schools, etc." Fauci also heard from Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg wrote to Fauci to detail Facebook's response to COVID-19, and he asked for Fauci's help in being part of a public health campaign. As part of the pitch on March 15th, Zuckerberg wrote, "I wanted to send a note of thanks for your leadership and everything you're doing to make our country's response to this outbreak as effective as possible." And then there are just regular people asking Fauci for advice. And Fauci answered, "Should I ask my rabbi to cancel services this weekend? Yes. I'm planning a conference in July 2020. Should I cancel? Should I wait? What should I do? Wait until May and then see what the situation looks like. Would human breast milk contain antibodies? Likely." Now, along with the interesting, there are certainly more significant emails, particularly about the origins of the coronavirus and the wearing of masks. Some of those emails have gotten a lot of attention, but in some cases, they're being spun out of context. First, despite what some media have reported, these emails weren't leaked. They were released by the federal government as part of an information request. Let's start with the emails about masks. On February 5th, about 2 weeks after the first known case appeared in the United States, Fauci received an email from a woman named Sylvia Burwell. That name might be familiar to you because Sylvia Burwell was Secretary of Health and Human Services under Barack Obama. Burwell was taking a trip and she wanted Fauci's advice. Should she wear a mask? Here's what Fauci wrote. "Masks are really for infected people to prevent them from spreading infection to people who are not infected, rather than protecting uninfected people from acquiring infection. I do not recommend that you wear a mask, particularly since you are going to a very low-risk location." Now, many people on social media and some news organizations used those comments to say Fauci was lying to Americans about masks. But that's not really accurate. Scientific consensus changed in April in 2020 as researchers learned more about COVID-19 and how it was spread. Fauci explained this to us last month when we interviewed him during United Facts of America.
I was asked on 60 Minutes, should everybody be wearing a mask? I said, no, there's really no reason to wear a mask. You know, A, we don't know that they work. B, mostly in respiratory illnesses, it's spread by people with symptoms. And third, you know, we don't want to consume all the masks. And then what evolved over a period of weeks to a month is A, it became clear that there isn't a shortage of masks and that cloth masks that people wear were adequate. Number two, meta-analysis studies started to show that it is true outside of the hospital setting, masks do work, not only in preventing you from infecting someone, but even for preventing you from getting infected. And then third, it became clear that the virus was clearly being transmitted by people who had no symptoms. And because of that, I changed and said, you know, we really should be wearing a mask.
The idea that Fauci lied to us over these past 16 months isn't supported by his public comments. Claims that suggest otherwise, well, they rate false. The other emails that are generating a lot of attention are the ones sent to Dr. Anthony Fauci about how the coronavirus started. The debate boils down to this. Did coronavirus jump from a bat to a human, or was it created in a lab? One email that seems to shed some light on the origin of the coronavirus comes from a researcher named Kristen Anderson. Anderson works at Scripps Research Institute in California. His email is dated January 31st, 2020. Anderson wrote, "The unusual features of this virus make up a really small part of the genome. less than 0.1%. So one has to look really closely at all of the sequences to see that some of the features potentially look engineered. So engineered is the key word here. Is that the smoking gun about how the coronavirus started? Hardly. Anderson and his colleagues went on 6 weeks later to write a research paper about the origins of the coronavirus. Their conclusion? Most likely it came from a natural cause and was not engineered. After Anderson's email to Fauci was released, Anderson tweeted that, quote, "We seriously considered a lab leak possibility, and what that email shows is a clear example of the scientific process." Now, social media users also zeroed in on an email from an independent researcher, a guy named Adam Gartner. The email from Gartner comes March 2nd. Its subject, coronavirus bioweapon production method. And the email starts ominously. This is how the virus was created. Now, the email goes on to use a lot of technical terms, but what the email doesn't have is any evidence. Not that the coronavirus was man-made, and certainly not that it was a bioweapon. So claims that Fauci ignored these emails that proved or showed a lab leak, they rate false. Here's the bottom line. The best fact-checking about COVID-19 has to build in and accept uncertainty. We all need to get more comfortable with that, even when it's not in our nature. In the case of where the coronavirus came from, Fauci and other scientists still likely believe that it came from an animal and transferred to a human. But now, maybe more so than ever, they're also open to the possibility that it did come from a lab and that it was maybe a manufactured or manipulated virus. That'll do it for this week. But if there's a claim you hear about the coronavirus that you're not sure of, email us, truthometer@politifact.com.